Okay, in this video we are going to run we are going to run the Visual Studio 2008 setup, okay, with the professional edition. Here it is, Visual Studio 2008 setup, that is we are going to run it, and this is again for a demo purpose only, and I am going to run it on the Windows Server 2003 release 2. Here we go. It says install Visual Studio 2008 view readme. I'll skip the view readme. There is a installed product documentation that would be coming in the end. Again, let's start installing the Visual Studio 2008. Here we go. As you can see, it has got dimmed. Now it's preparing for installing the Visual Studio 2008. As you can see, the Visual Studio 2008 is getting prepared to be getting installed on your computer. You can install a Visual Studio 2008 Professional on the Windows XP also, no problem. If it can be installed on the XP, it can be installed on the Windows Vista also, no problems thereon, and 7 also, but naturally. Here it is. Usually you will be trying to install a Visual Studio on Windows XP, not on the server. Usually you always keep the server for the database itself. You should not install anything on the server because it will create a problem because of the memory issues and other things that would be used by these programs and the disk space. So this is just for a demo purpose, so it is okay to install a Visual Studio 2008 on the Windows Server 2003 or 2008, whatever you want have it. But usually you would be installing a Visual Studio 2008 on a Windows XP, Vista or Windows 7. Here it is. It will keep on going slowly and slowly. It is set up the loading the installation components. There we go. Here it is. It has gone to the next screen. It has completed this thing. It will go to it will ask for the next screen to click the next screen, and we will click the next screen. Yeah, there we are. Next. I accept to the terms and condition, whatever you want to say. I do not accept to the terms and condition if you don't want to install, and I will move it to the next. Now there is a option of the default, full and customs. Now default would be actually having the most commonly used features of the product. Full install all the features of the product which you may or may not require, and then a custom, that is definitely, suppose if you only want to install something like .bb.net or something like that, only on one of the following features of the Visual Studio, then you can go with these things. Otherwise you can install the default is well off for most of the options. Otherwise you can go for a full. In this case I am going with the default, or maybe I will go with the full this time. Okay, then it says available space is 10.2 GB, required space is 4.3 GB, remaining is 5.9 GB, and with the default, if you go, let's say it says require 4 GB and 6.3 GB remaining. I think the default is good enough, and customs I can again check it out if you want. Then I will have to choose. I will be asked to choose from them. Okay, I will go with the default. Okay. Now the thing is that there is also an express edition available with the Visual Studio. Now this is a professional edition. And if you want to go with the Express Edition, you can always go with the Express Edition also, depending upon your whether you are going for your organization. As this is just for a demo purpose, I'm going to show you the professional only, because in the real production environment you would always be using the professional. Here we go, install, and it should be actually showing up the installation process. Okay, these are the features. Actually it's actually going to install Microsoft installing components, Microsoft Network Framework 3.5. okay, and the frameworks are nothing but libraries. Okay, they give it a very, what you call, glossy name to it. This is nothing but a library. And Microsoft Document Explorer, again this is the same thing as using for the help. Document Explorer, Microsoft Visual Studio Web Authoring Components. Again, these would be the parts of the Visual Studio that would be using for actually creating the, if you're creating a .NET front end on the web. Here we go. Then there is a Windows Mobile 5.c SDK, Pocket PC, and all those things for the mobile. If you are going to work with the mobile thing, actually we don't need all these things. Then there is a Crystal Report Basic for Visual Studio. Again, this is a basic, remember that thing. Visual Studio can come with, Crystal Reports can come with many things like professionals and a developer edition. Again, you can see that the Windows SDK with the, again this is for used for if you want to do some development at a lower level, and etc etc. Then there is a Microsoft SQL Server Publishing Wizard, and there are many more things that most of the things you won't be using it, except that for the .NET. There is a Microsoft Visual Studio 2008 that allows you to do the coding with the VB.NET C hash, and then we can move to the installation process. As you can see, we are moving it, and then there is a Go Mobile. Here it will say build application for the Windows Mobile by using the .NET Compact framework. And if you are actually best troubleshoot for Windows Vistas and Windows Server, here it is. Again, this is nothing but actually a tool that allows you to build the application for the Windows as well as the mobile. Visual Studio may not be very hard to learn, but it is definitely going to take some time if somebody wants to learn it. It is definitely easier than Java, except the C hash. If you're going for C hash requires you to be very object oriented compared to the VB. And it was going to take time, and I'm going to pause it for some time and come back whenever the installation process has taken place. I was installing the Microsoft Network Framework 3.5. What I mean that you should not install the Visual Studio on the server does not mean that you cannot install Visual Studio on the server, but you should not install a Visual Studio on a database server. That's what I mean by not installing the Visual Studio on the same server where your database lies. Otherwise, it will take a lot of memory and the CPU process would get divided until and unless you have a lot of memories. But still, it is not suggested that you run any application on the database server, whether it is a SQL server or whether it is Oracle or whether it's anything else, Sybase or anything else. It is not recommended to run any other application except the database application on the database server, period. If you are thinking why, the reason is very simple. If something goes wrong with the application and it hangs up, maybe you may have to reboot the server. If it creates a problem, if it gives you an error that you cannot actually cancel out and let the application run again, if it hangs your computer, definitely it means that you are going to reboot it, which is going to be a very costly affair in some critical situation. Until and unless you have a small organization where you can actually afford to do that thing, in large organization that would not be possible. Many applications are attached to that SQL server, they are running, they are updating, there are people updating the records from different places, inserting the data from different places. That would not be a correct way to install application on the database server. Rest said and done, you can experiment it if you can take the risk. Now if you are wondering why I am installing the Visual Studio on the database server, the reason is this is not a production server, this is just for a demo. There is nothing of it in the production, there is no database except adventure that comes with the SQL server. There are no users, there are no computers connected to this server. Very simple, this is a standalone computer with no users in it, and it doesn't matter if the database crashes because there isn't any production database here, and because there are no users connected to this server. So it's practically okay for this thing. Even if it crashes, it doesn't matter to me. But in the environment where there are a lot of users logging in from the different places, this would not be a practical solution. Now remember that if you want to use the Visual Studio 2008, you better have the IIS installed on your server or your Windows XP, Vista, whatever it is. Otherwise your Visual Studio, whatever application you create, are not going to run because there is no IIS installed on your computer, and that will not allow your application created in the Visual Studio to run if you want to test it. That is a prerequisite of actually installing the Visual Studio 2008. Visual Studio also comes with the Microsoft SQL Server, it also comes with the Express Edition, it also comes with the Professional Edition, and there may be other editions. The reason I am talking about it is that if you are going to have a Visual Studio Professional Editions, you are going to have a lot of templates, and there may be many other features that would be enabled into the Visual Studio Professional Edition that would not or may not be available in the Visual Studio that comes with the SQL Server. We are just here, as you can see, Microsoft .NET Component Framework 3.5 is going to take some time to finish it off. Not going to be that soon. So I'm going to just pause this thing so that you just don't get bored with the installation process. Okay, here is one more, installing Microsoft Document and Explorer 2008. Now you can see there is still actually not started installing Visual Studio 2008. These are the things it has to install before actually installing the SQL Server Visual Studio 2008. The reason is this is needed for Visual Studio 2008 to run properly. Okay, then you can see Visual Studio is down here. Visual Studio 2008 is down here, and these components and other things are just up before it. because they are needed before installing Visual Studio 2008. So we are not even have started installing a Visual Studio 2008. We are just actually looking towards the requirements that a Visual Studio 8 2008 needs to get installed are getting installed. If you do not know whether you have installed the Internet Information Server, you can go to the Add and Remove program and check the Windows component and see to it that whether you have installed the IIS, that is the Internet Information. You do install it by selecting the component, and it should be just working fine with you. If you get once installed, or if you have already installed it, then there should not be a problem. Most of you would be actually running a Visual Studio on the Windows XP, Vista or Windows 7, whatever it is, but you do need to install the IIS. And there would be also a web server component, I believe, that you need to install. That would be available with the IIS. When you select the IIS options, it should actually select that option also with it. These are the mistakes you learn by experimenting. If you do not have IIS installed, your system would not be running. Whatever application you create will not actually work. You better be sure what you are doing with the before actually running application, that you have the IIS installed on your computer. There we are. Now we are in the process of actually installing the Visual Studio 2008. It has just completed the process of installing the prerequisite of installing Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, and there we are, and it is generating a script, executing actions. Don't think this computer has a lesser memory. It's taking a lot of time. It has enough memory, but this process takes some time. It will be taking some time on your computer. After all, you are installing 4 gigabytes, and installing a 4 gigabytes is going to take some time from the CD. Of course, when you are installing it from the pen drive or a hard drive, the things can be faster compared to the when you are installing it from the CD. Okay, there we are. Getting the Microsoft SQL Publishing Wizard, the last part of the Visual Studio getting installed. As you can see, all the installing component have been successfully installed with the green tick in the left side of the components. Okay, and this would be getting over in just a few minutes. And there we are. It has just got finished, and I'm going to click OK, and that's the end of the getting the Visual Studio installed. Okay, I will just end it here.